Legislator Barnhart and Legislator Colby, could you hear us okay?
I hear you.
Yep, can you hear us?
Perfect.
So we just wait for 1 more minute for the meeting start.
Okay.
Everyone's ready. We'll get going.
Didn't I heard that? You didn't say.
Great. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone to the March 5th, 2026 special meeting of the Monroe County Planning Board. Got a few quorum votes here today, so let me take roll. Bill Santos. I'm here. Mike Wiedemer.
Here.
Dave Watson.
Here.
Millie Safranek. Actually, she has left, so I'll have to take her off the list here. Tyrese Bryant.
Here.
Elizabeth McDade. Milton Pichardo.
Here.
Victor Sanchez.
Here.
Robert Colby.
Here.
Rachel Barnhart. Hello. Amy Grower. Connor McMahon.
Here.
Adrian Green. Jennifer Cesario. Joe Taddeo.
Here.
Richard Tantalo.
Here.
Christina Doherty. Sean Murphy.
Here.
And Andy Frazier. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome. Did you get a book and sign in? Lisa, can you help? Yeah, great. And Yishan, would you like to introduce various county people, please?
Oh, we have a representative from Law Department, Josh Peterson and Bridget Cook.
And Matt Schwartz.
Thank you. And also for the Director of Real Property, Amy Grant here. And join us today. We also have a public citizen, Scott Mackay. He's a public citizen and also is the president of the Genesee Regional Off-Road Cyclists. So GROC. And for planning staff, we have a Pat Gooch here. We're going to present the CIP, proposed CIP, and have our clerk, Lisa Hampton, and myself, Kishan Mayer.
Great, thank you. Is approval of the February 26th, 2026 meeting minutes. They were emailed to you in the meeting packet, and I do need a motion for those, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Victor. Any discussion on those minutes? Comments, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Announcements and communications.
I just want to make sure everyone have a copy of the proposed 27 to 32 proposed CIP copy with you, and also you have signed in, so you have a record of that. Great. And that's all. Thank you.
Great. Any other board member reports? Staff reports? Thank you. Move on to item 3, the CIP presentation. And this is the introduction of the proposed 2027 through 2032 capital improvement program. And we have Mr. Gooch here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. 1 second, just to make sure everything's working.
Well, that's getting up and running. We just at the end, board members and voting members at the end of this process, we'll need a couple things from you. We need to deliver an approved CIP to the county executive by April 1st. And then we also have to have this coming year a capital project list prioritized. So anything in that, if you're going through this book, keep your eyes peeled, especially for the work due next year, and try to get an angle on how you want to prioritize that in the list. Okay.
We do have a list of the priority vote list coming out, so.
Chairman, thank you. That's actually a great setup for the second slide. I recognize that there's a few new members to the planning board. So I wanted to remind this body of its responsibilities that are enshrined in the county's charter and administrative code. So this planning board is charged with reviewing the proposed CIP every year. We have a 6-year CIP program that the county departments work on that is spearheaded by planning and finance to make sure that that CIP represents the needs of the departments, but also fits in with the fiscal parameters that the county has every year. Your charge through this month of March, which is a bit of a marathon, and I appreciate you all for starting this with me, is that you take a look, you review the slides today, you review the document in front of you. Feel free to ask questions here and as they come up through this month. And then to Chairman Santos' point, there are several meetings. If you have specific departments that you would like to learn a little bit more about their program, their projects, we can invite them in for presentations, or we can ask them specific questions through email, and I can follow up at the next meeting. As Chairman Santos stated, the administrative code and charter also charge you with identifying priority voting for the 2027 budget year. What that means is that you're going to rank all the projects from 1 to, I believe this year it's 83 or something like that. And you're going to do that to help us identify what projects in the rare event we don't have enough funding, which projects would be last. We have not had to go to that since I've been here, and I don't think we will this year, but that is the charge that you're moving forward with. And then lastly, you are to finalize this, identify that you believe it's sufficient with that priority voting, and then recommend it to the county executive. So we will move from the proposed stage to the recommended stage. County executive will review that and then submit that to the county legislature for the 2027-2032 recommended capital improvement program. So with that, I'll remind you about the entire process that has been going on in Monroe County. So in September, myself and finance work with the departments on what that CIP needs to look like. This includes both the process schedule and then any funding requirements that we've identified up front. It varies from year to year. Finance looks at how things are, identifies if there's a need to potentially reduce or if there's extra funding in the CIP program. Through October and January, we have several meetings with the CIP review committee to review the proposed projects, learn about them from the departments, learn about what needs to be done, and we identify if there's a need to maybe shift around certain projects because some are more costly than others. And so we're trying to balance out each year of the CIP to make sure that one year is now not so expensive that it creates problems. As we get into March, this comes to you. You have, as you know, at least 3 meetings, potentially 4 meetings. And your work here is part of the county's charter and administrative code. This isn't just an advisory. This is something that we need you to do. And then once you complete this, the county executive will submit it to the county legislature. It will go through their review process. And then in July, the county legislature will hold a public hearing and adopt the CIP in August after they consider and review it. Okay. So with that, Ishan, can you slide me forward? This didn't seem to work. Okay, so we have a lot of slides to get through. I'm going to talk quickly. Please don't hesitate to stop me if you need to backtrack. But you also have not the slides, but you have all the same information in your book. And the slides will be sent out afterwards as well. So in the charts you'll see coming up here, the blue bars are the adopted CIP from last year, 2026-2031. And the red bars are proposed department submissions for 2027-2032. The striped bars of the same color correspond to adopted and proposed. but those are for the 6-year program totals. The proposed funding, as shown in these slides, is in comparison to last year's program. So red numbers mean the funding decreased, green numbers mean the funding increased. The horizontal red arrows means the funding was shifted from year to year, or I should say a project was shifted from year to year. And then italicized projects are new projects to the CIP, and I'll draw your attention to those as we move to the departments. And then lastly, I'll also highlight the priority projects quantity per department, not specifically each one of them because there's too many to do. But you also have your incomplete ballot sheet, but that lists all the priority projects you need to vote on. Next slide, Ishan. I'll see if I can get this working as well. Whoop. There we go. Okay, so this year's total CIP, this is adopted CIP versus proposed CIP. So last year, our CIP total was $562 million. This year, it has decreased by about $40 million or 7% to $522 million. And that is a concerted effort on behalf of the county and finance. We are purposely trying to reduce the CIP over the next couple of years, and we did so last year as well, which was a 4% decrease. The goal is just there's funding in various streams. The CIP is one portion of the overall county budget, and so we need to make sure that we have funding to both pay for operational needs and for capital improvements. As you go through the years, you'll see on the bottom there, and I know it's a little small, but there's green and red numbers that indicate the difference per year. And once again, just a reminder, those first blue lines indicate the CIP from last year. The red line is the same year funding, but this proposed. So if it's higher, of course, that is going to be a higher amount. If it's lower, it's lower. You'll see on the chart at the bottom that the 2027, 2028, 2029, and 2031 are all higher numbers than the prior years. And 2030 is a little bit lower. The main difference really comes between the 2026 year, which is falling off, and the 2032 year, which is the out year, being a substantial difference of about $44 million. One note, the CIP is, especially the out years, they're not set in stone. It is meant to be a plan and a program of how we anticipate spending to happen over those years. As priorities and needs arise, that will change. As you know, leaky roofs happen, building expansions or changes need to happen. There are just projects that need to rise to the top during a certain year, and that happens, and so the CIP adjusts accordingly. Whoops, Ishan, I apologize, it keeps doing, yeah, thank you. So debt service, finance prepares for us what the anticipated debt service on the CIP will be based on the proposed program. So what you have there, and it's cutting off a little bit of the bottom there, but we have the existing debt is the blue on the bottom there. So that is what we anticipate, that the debt we've already accrued and need to pay off. The striped is authorized but unissued debt. So that is something that the county legislature has adopted through the CIP or potentially through an amendment. However, we've not actually spent the money for that project, and so we will go to that. We will ideally spend that based on the authorization, but it hasn't occurred yet. The red is debt added by this specific CIP. And as you can imagine, the out years has the most red there, and that's because those projects are on the out years. That's where ideally the departments are adding new projects or additional projects, because our goal is that ideally a new project doesn't come to the front unless it's a necessity. The goal is that we slate those in slowly but surely throughout the process. And then at the very top there is the total debt that is projected. And you'll see there's kind of a black trend line up top. And you'll see that we are intentionally sliding down on that. And that is one of the efforts that finance believes is important to make sure that that debt service just starts tailing down a little bit. And you can see it's not super aggressive, but it is a concerted effort on our part. Next step. Or next slide, sorry, thank you. So these are the annual funds by source. This is very hard to read, but this gives you the year by year focus, and it is in your department, just not in an aggregated format. And so what you can see here is that there are changes throughout. Once again, green numbers mean increases, red means decreases. And just to highlight throughout the years that the budget year CIP, which is the coming year, has increased by 4.2%. 2028 by 1.7%, 2029, 2030 are both decreases in the 5 to 3% range, 2031, 7%. And of course, there's nothing scheduled for 2032, so there is no percentage there. But overall, it is a 7% decrease. Next slide, please, Ishan. So this is just a graph showing you kind of the different funding scenarios. And so we'll talk about where these are coming from. So the blue on the left-hand side is county funding. So we have a couple different sources of funding, and you'll see in your first page of your proposed CIP, or second page, I believe, yep, that it will list and identify that. So we have county debt, we have county cash, we have district funding, which is specifically related to Pure Waters. We have district cash, also Pure Waters. That is the red in the upper right-hand corner. We have federal aids and grants, which is the purple in the middle. And then we have enterprise funding, which is the green on the bottom. And that represents both Monroe, or excuse me, not both, but Monroe Community Hospital, aviation, and solid waste. And so just to understand this map a little bit, 49% of the CIP is county funded through either debt or county cash. District is 30%, Pure Waters. Aid and grants, which is generally federal grants through DOT, the airport, or other programs that we're working on, and potentially private contributions when there's a road project that might involve either a municipality or a private developer. That is 16%. And then enterprise, which I mentioned before, being kind of the revenue generating departments of aviation, solid waste, and Monroe Community Hospital, that is 6%. Isha, next slide. Thank you. So this is the total funding source by 6-year program. So this takes those prior breakdowns and lays them out per the 6-year program. You can see, once again, that it varies from year to year, depending on our funding streams. You can see here as well that the CIP fluctuates from year to year. That is based on need, that is based on funding abilities. And then on the far right-hand side, those striped bars are the proposed CIP that we're looking at here. Same colors correspond, and that identifies that county is the primary source of the proposed, with district being the second most as well. And with that, we can slide to the next slide. We're going to move through this in terms of totals, then we'll go into departments. And for longtime CIP board members, slight change this year into how the order of the slides. I think hopefully we'll see how it flows, but I think it works better for a couple of reasons. Total federal funds. So that is aviation, DOT, highways and bridges, and traffic engineering. And so these are primarily, as I mentioned, grants that are coming in to pay for road projects that DOT is working on, or projects at the Frederick Douglass International Airport. So specifically, you see some spikes there in 2027. We have about $15.1 million of federal funds related to the airport scheduled for 2027. And we have about $5.24 million for DOT, highways and bridges. You'll see a spike in 2031 in the proposed. That is $8.4 million for highway preventive maintenance number 13. DOT has a schedule of projects that they work on with both the GTC and the federal government. That funding comes in as the federal government determined. And so every now and then we'll see a spike because something's been approved that was scheduled, but maybe not specifically identified as to when it could occur. And that's what's happening here in 2031. And total federal funds in the CIP is $57.49 million. So that is money coming into Monroe County to pay for projects. There's generally a match requirement. It depends on the funding source. Airport and DOT both have very generous matching, so that primary funding for most of the road and airport projects are federally funded. Next slide, please. State funds. So this is Monroe Community College, aviation again, facilities, depending on what we have going on, DOT, highways and bridges, and traffic engineering, and then the sheriff's office as well, both in the form of matching grants, depending on what's going on. And then, of course, the Monroe Community College, we have an agreement where Monroe County, the MCC, and the state pay for the facilities at the MCC. So you'll see there that we have a variety of funding streams through there. In 2030, we have a $1.6 million decrease in state funds for a variety of projects. There's really not one to call out. It's all over the board. 2031, we have a $1.5 million of state funds for DOT, and 2031 related to highway preventive maintenance number 13, which I mentioned previously. That also has federal funds. There's corresponding state funds. This chart is also likely to change next year when we know about state funding coming in. That is also another thing that lags behind our decision-making process. And so as those state grants get approved, that will be added to next year's CIP as well. But overall, you see that that is trended down towards overall. And as we move to the next year, that may change, as I mentioned, which happens nearly every year. Sorry, Ishan, thank you. So total county funds. This is almost every department I haven't mentioned yet. So Board of Elections, County Clerk's Office, Information Services, Medical Examiners, MCC, the Library, Facilities, Parks, Zoo, Highway and Bridges, Traffic Engineering, Public Safety, and Sheriff's Office. So this is really the bulk of the funding that you saw on that earlier graph that had the primary blue on the left-hand side. That's what this represents. As you can see here, this is about $252 million in the 6-year program. It is, as we mentioned, down from the prior CIP. Once again, that is a concerted effort on our part to try to just make sure things balance as we move into the next years. Nothing specifically to note. You can see those are all relatively close, but with some decreases. Once again, primary decrease is the difference between 2026 and 2032. Next slide, Ishan. So the top there is very hard to read. I apologize. Those are really just the delta between the prior and the current CIP. What we can see there is the different funding sources by different departments. So moving from left to right, you have Board of Education and County Clerk, nearly non-existent, Information Services, then Medical Examiner, Monroe Community College, Monroe Community Hospital, the Library Services, Aviation, Pure Waters, Facilities, Solid Waste, Parks, Zoo, Highways and Bridges, Traffic Engineering, Public Safety, and Sheriffs. So you can see kind of which departments have the most funding in the CIP by this graph. And then the up top, which I know you can't make out from here because I can't, but the red indicates that the CIP funding between that department has shrunk, green has increased. And so you see there's only about 4 departments, I believe, that have increased, and the rest of them have decreased. Moving on to the next slide. So just want to remind you about this opportunity, or not the opportunity, but your obligation. So you don't have to worry about it today. This is a vote that will take place next week, or we will provide you the instructions next week to do so. You can do so online via the CIP portal that all of you have access to, or on a paper copy that you can submit to us however you can get it to us. And then we will tally the result and present it at your, I believe, March 19th meeting. Next slide, please. All right, department slide. So we'll dig into the departments. And if there's any departments here who want to weigh in on their specific CIP, please don't hesitate. Let's go straight into Board of Elections. So Board of Elections has a $100,000 project in 2027. This is for elevator. They recently moved to a new facility, and they have a voting museum exhibit there. It is not currently ADA accessible, and so it will be with this elevator installation. That $2 million on the far left side is for some voting equipment that was purchased previously. That is falling off the CIP, which is why there's a significant difference between the two. Moving to the next slide. County Clerk has nothing to add to this CIP, so we can move through that quickly. One other note, all departments who have physical projects will appear in the CIP when that happens, but not every department has that every year, and so they come and go when needed. Information Services. They, as you can see, is a model of consistency, but a model of increasing cost, and that is related to data needs. So Director Kugel will mention that data costs are only increasing. As we know, more of the world's digital than it was many, many years ago. And so those add up to additional costs. And so that is what is expressed in this graph. They're up by about $1.2 million. Most of the Information Services CIP is related to various hardware requirements we need for, of course, internet services in Monroe County, but then additional servers and other things that are used for a variety of purposes. All right, moving to the next department. Medical Examiner is a pretty routine funding structure as well. So as you probably are aware, the Medical Examiner is responsible for a variety of things, but that is a couple things. They have equipment that is used to test various drugs that come into the facility. That equipment needs to be routinely replaced either because of age or because of new technology coming on board. And so they have an every other year funding cycle. And when there is need, they go ahead and purchase that equipment. There are some years they don't purchase equipment and they stockpile 1 or 2 years of the CIP dollars so that way they can afford something that's more expensive than what they have here. Their CIP has shrunk a little bit by about $135,000, but within their needs based on this current program. Next slide, please. MCC. So as I mentioned, there is a funding structure here through the county and the state. So you'll see if you look at the CIP, the funding generally mirrors county and state for the most part. And that is the way community colleges are set up in New York State. $12.24 million decrease. However, I will note that Monroe Community College did go through a new facilities master plan this past year. It was adopted in December, not really in time to admit into this CIP based on the way our timeframe works. But they do anticipate that that will impact next year's CIP with new projects or maybe a reorientation of the current program. And so that's something we'll work through, and we just anticipate changes for next year, whatever those may be. All right, and moving to Monroe Community Library System. So $60,000 increase from 2026 to 2031. And that is related to the additional cost of library system automation. So as you know, it is advantageous or desirable to automate some of the processes of the library. This goes to their online collections and how they administer library cards. Costs for that have gone up a little bit, and so they are building that into their CIP. That has been increased by $60,000, which is what that increase is. The other project that changed in their program is moving from 2029 to 2028, their fleet system replacement. For any of us who use physical books at the library, you can return them to any other library in Monroe County, and it'll get back to its home library. And that is thanks to a fleet of vehicles that essentially curry those from spot to spot. And they were hoping to hold off to 2029 to replace a couple of those, but they need to move it up to 2028. Moving to DES engineering and facilities. All right, so we have a good amount falling off in 2026, which is on your far left-hand side. You'll note that there's about a $20 million difference, and that is actually related to what has fallen off. Their CIP program, although it has some fluctuation, is relatively static. Overall change there is about or reduction of $22 million. So across the program, there's not, besides that 2026 falling off program, there's not one specific project I want to draw your attention to. They do have 7 projects to consider for the 2027 priority voting. The largest decreases, just for your awareness, are some Westfall building reconstruction projects, public safety communications project, and then an increase to some electrical equipment replacement at some various county facilities. Moving to the county's parks department. So county's parks department does have a kind of bump there in 2027, and that is related to moving up the Ellison Park improvements from 2031 to 2027. There is need there that they can no longer wait. Specifically, there is a lodge, the Pavilion Lodge at Ellison Park, that was closed in 2024 due to unsafe conditions. And so they are actually replacing that. It's a historic structure and was built in 1929, and they will be replacing that in the 2027 CIP. They also have 7 projects to consider for priority voting. Moving to the zoo, which is also a parks department. They have a slight $500,000 decrease over their 6-year program, adjustments throughout. They have 2 projects to consider for 2027 priority voting. And those are the facilities and grounds, and then zoo light duty equipment. Moving to DOT highway and bridges. So this is a $15.3 million increase from the prior 6-year CIP. It's mostly related to federal funding, but not exclusively. As I mentioned before, there are additional federal funds that have come into the county related to roads. And so that's what that $11 million or that part of that $15.3 million increase is related to that funding. And then they also have a good amount of projects to consider for priority voting, 10 projects. And then I'm just going to remind you that the next department is a DOT project as well. Traffic engineering. So 2 sides of the coin. Traffic engineering is, as you can imagine, the signals and lights that you use that at traffic intersections or as a pedestrian when crossing the street. If you're not aware, Monroe County actually is responsible for almost all of the lights and facilities that are not state across Monroe County. So that means in most of your communities and in the city of Rochester, Monroe County does the traffic lights for those towns, villages, and the city. Overall decrease to their program is about $920,000, not a huge decrease. And they have a variety of projects, as I mentioned, that will be moving forward. They have a pretty routine program as well, because as you can imagine, those traffic engineering features don't change dramatically. There's always need to replace and fix those. One thing to note, they have a building rehabilitation scheduled for 2028. The Rochester Transit Operations Center, or the James Pond Traffic Operations Center, the James Pond Traffic Operations Center, out by the airport, has some maintenance needs that will be addressed in 2028. All right, moving into the public safety section. So we have a variety of changes here. Overall program, it has decreased by a little over $1 million. I believe it's 1.2 or so. You can see that there's some heavy years in 2030 and 2031. Some increases there as well. One other thing to note, as we move through the CIP program, departments get a better understanding of the cost of projects as they come closer into the program, and they adjust their projects based on what they know in terms of either quoting or inflation. And so often you'll see, much like with 2030 and 2031, that project numbers rise a little bit in the out years as they move forward. There are 8 projects from public safety to consider for priority voting. Monroe County Sheriff's Office. So this is the last county department we're going to speak of, and then we'll move into both district and enterprise. Slight decrease to the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, increase in 2027 related to 2 increases in projects. One is the Sheriff's Body Worn Camera Project, which has increased by $500,000. And then the radio communications infrastructure for the Jail and Court Bureau, which is a $1.25 million increase as well. Anything else to note there? We have some decreases to try to balance that out, but overall a $400,000 decrease for their total 6-year program. And they have 8 projects to consider for priority voting as well. Okay, so now we're going to move into the district funds. So as I mentioned before, those were county departments. Those are all funded primarily through county debt or county cash. Now we're moving to district. So those are essentially the pure waters district, the sewers that we all use. Though that funding can be assigned to specific users, the districts. And so it does impact the county's funding, but it's a little different than the county funding. And so that's why we've separated them at the end here. So Pure Waters is the only district funding we have. It has dropped from $167.6 million to $160.1 million. As you can see, it is the largest source of funding in the county's CIP. Always is due to the significant infrastructure needs across the county, maintenance on the sewers. Specifically, we have several new projects that I want to draw people's attention to. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new projects that are all scheduled for the out years. Relatively routine in the way Pure Waters does this. As they identify improvements that need to happen to the system, whether it is sewer piping or treatment centers, they put them in the out years and then they slowly bring them up. And so I'm not going to go into all the details. It can be a dirty business, but there's a lot of work really to the way the effluent is handled and the way it's treated. $7.5 million decrease, as I mentioned, with 12 projects to consider for the 2027 priority year. Okay, now we're going to move into enterprise funds. So as I mentioned, these are really self-driven revenue generating departments. So Monroe Community Hospital, aviation, and solid waste. So as you can imagine, there are fees for using for both trash and tipping fees. Aviation, there are fees related to the airport's use. And then Monroe Community Hospital, of course, generates revenue through the services it provides for the population it serves. big note, overall enterprise funds, you'll see a drop off in 2026 of $16.9 million. The new CIP coming on is only $5.4 million, which explains most of the decrease from $38.9 million to $29.0 million aggregated by enterprise funds. Now we'll drill down to the specific departments within those enterprise funds. Monroe Community Hospital has about a $500,000 decrease from the prior CIP. Previously, it was $14.51 million. It is now a flat $14 million. Variety of changes. There's multiple adjustments to the 6-year cycle. There's not one specifically I want to draw your attention to because they are kind of all over the board. That is it for Monroe Community Hospital. All right, the airports. So the airport has a $2.15 million increase from the prior CIP. That is from $47.95 million to $50.10 million. You'll see that 2027 is identical, with the difference being in the out years. Specifically, the 2032 CIP is higher than the 2026 year, which is falling off. And so that really represents a good portion of the increase. I believe there are no new projects from the airport. Yeah, that's correct. There's no new projects from the airport. That happens from time to time. And we'll see if that changes next year. I anticipate it will. But overall, a $2 million increase there and 7 projects to consider for the 2027 priority vote. Our last enterprise department is solid waste, also a Department of Environmental Services program. So you'll see on the far left-hand side that large blue bar, $11 million is falling off in 2026. That's for a project that is underway and hopefully being completed in 2026, 2027. And that's the Gloria Drive landfill improvements that have been scheduled. And so the rest of DES solid waste has a significant drop because of that, going from 17.88 million to 8 million. Changes throughout, you can see it's relatively static otherwise, with the 2032 new year being $1.5 million. There are no new projects for solid waste as well, and only one project to consider for priority voting. And then lastly, this is part of the CIP, but it is slightly different, and that is the Monroe County Water Authority. This is in here for informational purposes only. It is technically not a part of the county's CIP in the sense that we are not in charge of this funding stream, but the bonding structure of Monroe Community Water Authority, Monroe County Water Authority does need to be included in the CIP for purposes related to the bonding. And so it is included every year. Their CIP program is largely driven by their own, but you'll see that it is an increase of $7 million. Much like Pure Waters, it is based on the infrastructure needs. So the water that comes to most of our taps is provided by the Water Authority, either from Lake Ontario or from the Hemlock and Canadice Lakes down in the about an hour south of us. And that is everything from Monroe County Water Authority. So I know this is a lot and I rattled through it quickly. I do so on purpose so that way you have time to ask questions at the end and to think about who you would like to hear from. So the next meeting, our goal is we are statutorily required to have a public hearing where the public can come and learn about the CIP and ask questions. We will do so at the next meeting if this board decides to call that public hearing. We also will have department presentations for those departments that this board chooses to invite. And then we'll provide you with the priority voting instructions with just a little more detail than we gave today. And then that is the extent of the CIP for today. Time for questions, thoughts, anything else?
Questions for Pat?
Probably just a few high-level questions.
Yeah.
Maybe a great presentation, by the way.
Yes.
And very thorough, and you know your stuff. So I appreciate sharing all that with the group. The one of the earlier slides, and I'm just trying to remember context of past years, and maybe Bill would know. Like the just the one that shows like the current 6-year CIP versus and then layered in.
Slide.
Yeah. kind of remember it being more gradual in years past. And was there like it was a little bit of a U shape to the bar graph with like 27, 28, 29 having less? And maybe 28, 29 in particular. I didn't know if there was something that drove past projects those years.
I don't think there's anything specific that drives that U. I think, in part, 2027, the first year of the CIP is generally always increased, not always, but because there's needs.
Yeah.
There are things that departments identify that have to happen, and they've waited, they've pushed it off, they've held off on doing it, and then they identify that we can't wait any longer. So we have those conversations and we identify what those are. And that often happens in the beginning years, but then it also happens on the out years, I think. And so that is that departments identify we have this big need, not urgent yet, but we know it's out there, it's coming. And so they want to get it in the CIP. And that's generally why I think there's always a increase or larger bars at both tail ends of the CIP program. Ishan, can you slide over to I think it's the next slide or the one more? One more.
So if my memory was better, the U would not be unique.
I mean, every CIP is slightly unique, and,
Yeah.
and I want to go to the one more slide to show you that it fluctuates. One more, I think. Apologies. There we go. So these are the 6-year programs. So starting on the left-hand side, you have, and Ishan, can you read those off? I can't.
This is the 497.
No, I'm sorry, the years on the bottom. Yeah.
23 to 28.
Okay. So 23 to 28, and then 24 to 29, 25 to 30, and 26. Thank you. So as you can see, it fluctuates from year to year. That's the total 6-year program. As you can see, we've adjusted down the last couple of years. We had a relatively high year in 2025, 2030 with that 589 million for a variety of reasons, including we had additional funding from the federal government for a variety of reasons. Prior years are smaller. So it really just depends on what the needs are and what's going on. And then also what financial realities of both the county and the world are. Because our finances are largely driven by what's going on in the world, since we're based on both sales tax and property tax.
Yeah. In the 2 shades of blue, the difference is kind of where the county funding is coming from, debt versus non-debt.
Correct. Jennifer, Joe, do you want to chime in with that?
Yeah, the lighter blue would be items that we're going to bond for. The darker blue is county cash capital that departments budget each year in their operating budget.
Is the Monroe County Water Authority debt included in those? Given that
They're not.
they're not.
They just run it through as a vehicle and then they pay for that.
Yeah, so they're technically obligated separately to pay their own debt. So they are not included in any of the total slides. But
That curve that you had a couple slides back,
correct. That
the
does not
water
include
authority isn't in there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
everything up until Monroe County Water Authority. So all the districts, all the enterprise funding, that is included in all of these total slides.
Like, I think your memory is, it does change, because we've had some projects that are bigger, MCC and, you name it, we've had some big, and it would bump that
Yeah.
shape. But I think that, that we're trying to lower the debt here and, tighten the belt. That's what creates, like Pat said, it creates that U shape and that.
And I believe the large jump in the middle there is related to the MCC ATC project that was approved by this board in 2025.
Right.
So that, I think that was what, $23 million, Sean, something like that, or less?
More actually.
More,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So that explains a good portion of that jump, one single project at MCC.
And then you go back to the downtown campus and there's jobs that, bumped us. So, we're trying to flatten that out, but there's always something that comes along. So.
And Mike, I can take a look at past CIPs and see if your memory is accurate.
I should have brought my, stack of books.
I have last year's.
Shoot
Like it.
myself. The headline's impressive, right? Despite the headwinds of how more expensive it is to do stuff, to have the CapEx go down 7%.
Yeah.
That's great.
Any other questions for Patrick? New people, questions, come on.
I know it's a lot, I apologize.
It is a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Talk it through. What are you thinking?
I mean, so the 39 million will be because of cuts to, previous, project, or because you are projecting less project?
Yeah, look at
Potentially
the
both.
number on the blue on the left, 2026. Those are the projects that were just completed, right? And then look at the number far right, 2032. It's red. The bar is shorter.
Project.
So that helps. And then all those little differences in between. But
So-
the big one is that big step there.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a bit of both of what you're asking. So some departments have either scaled back or changed certain projects to make them less costly in various ways. But then also there are less, the new year, 2032, doesn't have as much funding as the year that's falling off, 2026. And so that represents the bulk of the difference between the two. And that is theoretical because it's, 5 years out from here. So that will change before we get to the actual funding year.
So that kind of brings up a couple questions for me. One is, so because we are projecting kind of the project so far out,
Yep.
are we building like some anticipation escalation into kind of those projects? Or are we just kind of taking today's numbers and just applying it down the road, knowing that when that time comes, we're going to see an increase at that moment?
Sean, you want to handle this one? You
We
usually.
do build escalation into it in the upcoming years. And part of that went back, I think, to your question last year too, about how we do it in Pure Waters. We take a project cost and then do the 2080 thing.
Oh, yeah.
So in the first year, you'll see in 31, it's a smaller amount of money because that's the design cost. We get a better handle on what the actual costs are once we design it, then add more escalation, and then in the subsequent year, we would increase potentially that number. We identify just as a strictly capital or construction cost. So yeah, there is an effort to escalate as much as possible
Yeah.
for what we know. at
As
this point.
far as you can know, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. What are we using for escalation these days?
Well, 4% these days, just to play it safe.
Per year?
Because back during COVID, we were seeing upward in 12,
Yeah.
and some products were actually 50%
Yes.
increase in cost. So
That's
it's quite, yeah.
And every year we go through this process, so the departments get another whack at it every year to see if the costs have changed. And so that's why often we have increases by departments as they recognize that this project that they thought cost X is now going to cost X plus. And so every year there's a little bit of difference. And as we get to the actual capital budget year, which in this case is 2027, they try to really dial that in as much as they can.
And then for projects that you anticipate getting federal or state grants, obviously, like you're just anticipating that you're going to be able to apply for that. You don't actually know that that grant is coming like 2 or 3 years down the
It
road. Or do
depends
you?
on what the grant is.
Okay.
So there are specific grant formulas for both aviation and DOT. And so they know what that is. So if they know their project is X, they know that the federal government is going to pay X, we are going to pay X, and maybe the state's going to pay X. So they can schedule and pencil that all in. It may not be approved yet, but it is, if the overall project is approved by all those federal and state levels, it's going to be funded at that level. And the same thing with the airport, which is a 90-5-5 program. So 90% is federal, 5% is state, or no, 10% is state, and the last 5 is coming from the airport. And so they know that, they just have to wait for it to be approved.
And a bit of a difference in DOT and aviation. I think their projects kind of rely on that funding to move forward. Whereas our projects, we basically do them anyway. And if we get funding, that's great. So the MCC project, ATC, we move forward 50% state, 50% us, but then we got an extra $3.5 million from the federal grant. But we didn't account for that moving into the project. So we're going to do the project either way. So that money just then comes back and takes off the cost of bonding. And that reduces the overall debt.
Yeah, and specifically, the airport has to wait to start a project until they receive approval from the state level. So they anticipate what they're going to do, state agrees to it, then it gets actually put in here. And they may have something in here that they hope to do, but has not yet been approved, and that would change depending on what is approved at the state level. And that's for all airports across the state. It's not unique to Monroe County.
Another anticipated cost for projects are change orders. I guess there's no project without a change order. If a project increases their budgeted amount, but, and there's multiple projects, so the amount of change order for could be significant. Is that taken from the next year, or you will go into one of, additional funding from CAD? How do you handle that?
So we account for that in contingency in addition to the escalation. So generally on a new project, we don't account for about a 10 to 15% contingency, but if it's a renovation, we go from 15 to 25, just because like this building, 100 years old, we have a lot of unforeseen conditions. So we account for that when we do the budgeting.
And I guess on the same question, if the contingency is not used, then it goes back to vision.
It's just money we don't spend. So it's remember last week I talked about the general construction stuff in your waters. That's a cash capital, but if it's a discrete capital project, if we don't spend the money, it doesn't get bonded.
Then one
We
other
don't use it
note.
for something else.
Another note is, the only thing that actually gets funded through the CIP is the capital budget year #1. So that's 2027 in this instance. And that won't happen until December when it moves forward with the county's actual adopted budget. So 2028 to 2032 are all on paper for another year before anything is funded in there. So none of the changes that happen there are ever actually programmed to be spent. They're just programmed as the next steps of what we will be spending.
And then going back to the question about the U-shape, remember we had a couple of really large projects that were in previous CIPs. The zoo was 100 million bucks.
Yeah.
MCC was about 55 million. CDC was 65 million. All those in previous years all came off, and the jobs we're doing now are, in the 10, $20 million, but certainly not what they had been before.
Yeah, that was big.
Yeah.
Very good.
So, yeah, I guess from a process standpoint, as far as like having specific questions about some of these projects, could we just send you an email and?
Yep. So the book does contain more description of the projects, both a narrative and some financing numbers. But if you have specific questions about projects, you can send them to myself or Ishan, and then we can either answer them or get them to the appropriate department and then address them next week. And if there's a specific department you think you would like to learn more about, communicate that, because that's the point of next week's meeting, in addition to the public hearing, is to bring some of these departments in to learn about their programs or to learn about a specific project.
Question down low.
So is the public hearing going to be in this room?
Yes, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't typically get a lot of
So you're
people.
not anticipating a lot of public?
We do have
We
a
have a
lot
regular
of
member, I think, that's-
submission to comments, so that we also have the option to call or to email their specific comments, because the CIP will be available online. Also, we have a paper copy available in the office. So we do receive a lot of copies through email, and also we have available for online, so people can register, participate via Zoom and in person also.
The other, Elizabeth, you good? Okay. Tyrese?
What's the due date on the vote again? It was a slide for it.
So we need to wrap this project. The due date for the vote is the 19th. Yes.
Yeah.
So your next meeting, or the 2 meetings from now, is March 20th. We wrap the vote up on the 19th, so that way I have time to tally that and put it in a presentation for you.
All set, Tyrese?
Yeah, that's from all the rapid
Okay.
very
Yeah.
crazy work schedule.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah. Any other board members with questions for Patrick? Okay, so I had, just going through it, I had a question on the MCC master plan for 2025. They just completed it, you said, in December. Is that something that they'd be ready to say, oh yeah, here it is, and you can expect something affecting the plan, something like this, but, not holding them to anything.
I could check with MCC. Their representative did let me know that, why it's in this presentation, that it would be changing.
Yeah.
But they did not give me any specifics, and I don't know if they're ready to say that, but I believe the plan is public, and we could at least share with the board. And if we wanted, we can ask to see if they're ready to start telling us about what they think is gonna come.
Yeah.
But it won't affect the CIP.
And I'm not saying, I want to go through the whole master plan. I'm just like a summary.
Yeah, I
you know?
get it. Oh, okay. I will reach out to Quinn.
See if it's feasible. If not, then if they're not ready, then that's.
By MCC comments.
Yeah, well, Pat is gonna
Let me
check
see if
with
they
them
have
to see if
information.
they're ready for it. If not, then, but I think we'd like to hear it eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, again, it's an update of the one that was completed in 21, so it's not a brand new,
Yeah.
oh, shoot, let's build a whole new campus or
Right,
something.
right.
It's changing things that are
right.
going on.
They
Right.
should be, yeah, it should be just more of the same direction, right? So, yeah.
Just keep in mind too, we talked about MCC ATC, when that project got accelerated, the Services for Students project got moved back,
Right.
right? And that's
Yeah.
actually coming up now. That's why you'll see a fairly large number. That's, I
Yeah.
think, $21 million.
Right.
Right, that's gonna start, we're gonna do design and start the process of building that.
Did anyone else have questions of a department they wanted to see? Mike, anything on your end?
I mean, I don't have, my mind always goes like just the materiality, right? I mean, I
Yes.
think 50% of the county funding is generally DOT and public
Yes.
safety.
Anything?
So just, I
Do you
don't know,
have
it
any
seemed to
questions
be
for them, or
reasonable.
you good?
Not right now.
Yeah,
So,
no, I hear you.
but if we were gonna invite a couple departments in and there were no better suggestions, I would just probably say that the two.
Major players.
I definitely would love to hear more from the DOT.
Okay. Then you're gonna check on MCC and definitely DOT then? Public safety, yeah, sure. They've been in a few times.
They've been here a bunch, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
We love coming.
We sense that.
Do you have specific questions for him, or should we put him on the list, or no? It'd be next week probably, so we're trying to get
I'm okay with that.
things
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
without, okay?
And if board members do have specific questions
Yeah.
for any of the departments, once again, we can ask them individually without a presentation, or we can ask them and prep them. And so you can send those to us for at least till Monday or so. So that way it gives the departments a little bit of knowledge, maybe Tuesday at the latest. So that way they have some idea of what you're asking.
The department presentation could be next Thursday or the following Thursday.
True.
So it could be the
Good point.
12th after the public hearing or on the 19th before the full vote.
Good point. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other requests? No, so hearing none, we'll just do MCC and DOT for now, right? That makes sense?
Yep.
And then the next item on the agenda is to set the public hearing on the proposed 2027 through 2032 capital improvement program for Thursday, March 12th, 2026 at 3 p.m. in this room. And I do have a copy of the official public notice if you're interested in reading it, but I do need a motion for that, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Tyrese. Is there a second? David? Great. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. We will have the public hearing March 12th. Our next item, by the way, thank you, Pat. Nice job. Very good.
Yeah.
Our next item is item 4, under action items, is to amend the 2026 through 2031 capital improvement program and the 2026 capital budget to add a project entitled Purchase and Renovation of the Former Carestream Building. And pursuant to the Public Officers Law, I need a motion. May I have a motion pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105(1)(h) to enter executive session for the consideration of this item because publicity of this proposed acquisition would substantially affect the value of the property being discussed. Motion, please. Thank you, Victor. Is there a second?
I'll do it.
Sean? Thank you. Any discussion? So under discussion, I think we just want to mention who stays, who goes.
Yes, the members of the board stay. If your alternate is here, only one, the alternate or the appointed member should stay, or people whose knowledge is required for discussion of the matter, and the planning staff who can assist. I mean, somebody from public safety can leave, and a few other guests can leave. And Pat, thank you.
You vote.
Yes, we do
I
need a
will,
vote.
but I'm just under discussion. I want to talk about who needs to stay and who needs to go. So is that clear? Any questions on that? Okay, hearing no questions, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. All right. So I'll ask all those